Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one, Communitarianism, part two, like I promised, and things is gonna be different. We're gonna check this out. We're gonna check this out. We're going to check this out. We're gonna hit it with another one. Let me get started. Let me get set up for a minute. Let's see here for a minute. Let's see here for a minute. We're gonna drop this off. That yeah, we're gonna go for a minute. So okay, let's go on. Degenerate. Salute, salute, salute. Let's see. Educational. Political world systems. We're gonna talk about something different next week. We'll talk about totalitarianism next week. I'm going to expound on the Russia and Ukraine thing as these examples, and we'll do more research and things like that nature. So let's see who's going on. Who is this? Who is this? Good evening. Good evening. Like I said, we're gonna talk about it a little bit. I think we're gonna just stick with it and things like that. So we're gonna wait. I'll pull this up for a minute. So as y'all can tell, we're gonna just spew on it, and that's just how it is. Oh god, and that's how. Okay, folks, we're gonna get into it right here. Let me look down on this for real quick. Let me share the screen. So we talked about it. Basically, we talked about the part, and we get into the disasters in a minute. So normally, I'm cancels this real quick. Normally, we talked about it, and it's just something that when you're dealing with this type of topic, and I mean, we talked about communitarianism last week, and if you saw part one, it's in the political world systems playlist. If you saw part one, you can catch that on the channel and things like that. What I was talking about. So let me find this real quick in the philosophy. So basically, it is a 20th century political doctrine which emphasized the interests of communities and societies over those of the individual, while not necessarily hostile to liberalism or social democracy per se. It does oppose individualist doctrines like libertarianism, which stresses human independence and the importance of individual self reliance and liberty. Most aspects of modern conservatism advocating instead ideas such as civil society, the concept of voluntary civic and social organization institutions, as opposed to forced back instructions of a state and commercial institutions. So it's almost like collectivism, but it's not. It's like collectivism a little bit, but it's the opposite of that. But that's communitarianism. We talked about that last week. Basics on the philosophy. I'm gonna have this right here real quick. Um, we're gonna leave this up in case y'all don't know, and we talk about the two parts. So I'm just gonna talk for a minute. But yeah, communitarianism is one of those philosophies that's rarely talked about in moments, and people just get into it, and that's just how often it's not talked about, and that just shows you what it is, and it's just what it is. It is what it is. But one thing I can say about it, it's one of those topics that's very interesting. I'm glad I did it in part one, but part two, it's going to be good. So yeah, we're going to read this real quick. Let me pull up the screen and let's talk to y'all for a minute. Let's talk to y'all for a minute. We're going to get into this part right here. I know people don't want me to read this, but it don't matter. Okay, we at this part, the communal self law. Communal self. We read particularism and partiality. We read that, and what is this? Communal self, I believe, and then there's a political communitarianism. We can read this again, and if I have read it again, we're gonna start from here again. So we said, okay, let me take myself out the screen so for a minute because I know people ain't gonna watch as much. So let's go for it. Let's go for it. And let's see real quick because apparently we seeing this going on, but I'll get this out here real quick. I know people are just in and out, and I'm just like, okay. What we have in the communitarianism in rejecting liberal universalism and value of neutrality anchors its ethical conception in a particular view of the self and moral agency. For example, Sendell, 1998. Let me get up close for a minute. Sendell, 1998, has argued that Rawls' liberal arguments depends on the notion of self as abstracted from its social, historical, cultural, and ethical context. This unencumbered self, Sendell argues, it is required by Rawls' theory to the choose between the candidate principles of justice. However, in the absence of particularly social and historical context, Sandel argues that a person could not choose moral principles, since she would be stripped of previously the qualities of the make choice possible, namely an agency embedded in and emerging from particular community. People grow up in somewhere in their moral and self in the consequences of their practice and the beliefs, the structure of their experiences. The liberal idea of the universal and abstract self thus became a foil against foil against which a communitarian concept of the moral agency was developed. Michael Walzer, in his influential Sphere of Justice, in 1984, for example, argues that the problem of justice must begin with the idea of the people start over the particular inherent relations to the goods that they inherit are as an historical fact from their communities. He says 1984. Yeah, 1984. And to aid without each as such a history which begins a birth, they wouldn't be that men and women in any recognizable sense. And they wouldn't have the first notion of how to go ahead by the business and giving the elucidating the exchange goods. Charles Taylor, 19, let's read this, 1992, in his focusing critique. Let me pull this up for a little bit. Oh man, I can't even read far away. Okay. In critiquing the Robert Nozick's libertarian individualism, has described the universalist concept of the self as an autonomistic and view in which a persons are understood and implausibly disconnected from a particular social context in which they are nurtured in their agency form. Taylor complains that the Nozick's ideas of agencies and the reduction to their idea of mere choices untethered to a culture background that would make sense of them. But he says in 1992's 2A or page 47, okay, the crucial point here is that the sense the free individual can only maintain his identity within a society culture of a certain kind to be has been concerned, but about the shape of the society culture as a whole. But he cannot following the libertarian anarchist model. He sketch and be concerned purely with his individual choices and the association formed from such choices to the neglect of the matrix in which such choices can be open or closed, rich or meager. Okay. Autonomistic self that Taylor criticized here is not only the disconnect from its social background and community, but the concern, but also, but also conceived as essentially acquisitive, and the universalist liberal self is a presented rational in the sense of instrumental rationality, i.e., a self that calculates for his own advantage. Thus, the liberal self is not only the adrift from community, but also regarded by some communitarians as a threat to community. By disentangling the individual from the attachments of their social background, necessary for forming a robust moral agency. Therefore, in summary, liberal individualism, both as metaphysical theory, as an account of practical agency, and reject by communitarianism. Instead, communitarianism gives the normative priority to the community and understands an individual's agency as emergent properly of the social historical background that forms and shapes a person's scheme of values. It rejects a normative. It rejects the normative justifications that rest on universal claims to epist- epistemic epistemic epistemistic authority, and rejects a moral psychology. This is grounded in a acquisitive account of moral agency. Okay. So we just read the communal self, and we're going to political communitarianism. We're going to read that and the disasters of communitarianism. So I think this is part will it's a long read, and they got the justice, okay, the criticisms and things like that. And there's the conclusions. We ain't gonna read the footnotes. So we're gonna get to this part right here. I know this part is like a long read. We're gonna get to the political. It's a small read. We'll see who's up in here for a minute. He said, okay, Matt, what's going on, man? Let's see. People in here. All right, appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all coming through. Okay, the political communitarianism. I wanted to mention the briefly movement in communitarianism thought that is a concern with the intra intricacies and details in philosophical arguments, more concerned with the advancing a politically conservative campaign to undo what it to regard as a erosion of traditional values. Communitarianism as a philosophical theory does not specify which community values and practice are justified, since obviously this will depend on the particular community in question. What I'm calling political communitarianism has a particular agenda, almost mainly at Western liberal democracies and laments. My fault, y'all. My fault, y'all. It's been a while. It's been a while. My fault. Hold on, I missed my place. Hold on. I got distracted a little bit. My fault. And traditional values, community. Okay, the values Okay, obviously will depend on the particular community in question. Okay, what we call political communitarianism. Okay, and what it takes is to be loss of a community, a spirit that is to be found in traditional conceptions of family good, neighborless, neighborlessness, local autonomy, and self-reliance. Possibly the clearest statement of political communitarianism can be found in many works of Azoni, in particular in his book, The Spirit of Community, 1994. Lastly, political communitarianism is particularly skeptical about the value of the state and its agencies, and frequently regards to the state and government as interfering with local community autonomy. Again, this is skepticism will have obviously consequences for the way communitarians think about the role of the state that is a preparation for response to recovery from disasters. This is political communitarianism I just read right here. And this is by inkspringer.com. Talks about communitarianism. Here's the disasters of communitarianism. As mentioned in the introduction, communitarians have written very little on the problem of disasters, even less on challenges to ethical thinking that the disasters represent. For instance, Noam Zach's book, Ethics for Disaster, Zach 2009, and her article, Philosophy and Disasters, Zach 2006, mention a variety of ethical approaches to disasters, but she also makes no mention of communitarians as an option. So while there is a couple of communitarian sources that directly engage with disasters, which I will discuss below, we will have to rely on largely on construction of communitarian insight, and hopefully this will be a sufficient to get a personal picture of communitarian perspective on the ethical dilemmas and the disasters occasion. For someone sympathetic to the approach to the normal thinking, there is a fertile ground for further thought and writing. It might strike readers who are familiar with the extensive social science and literature and disasters and odd that the communitarian's ethics is the underrepresented is the philosophical thinking about disasters. After all, the importance of the community, a common theme in the discussion of disasters, indeed is one of the attractions of the communitarian approach that places so much importance on the role of the community. Lisa Saban, Sabin, Lisa Sabin, whose recent work offers the clearest and the most sustained defense of the value of communitarians for the thinking about disasters, writes Sabin's 2016, page 61. So we got this right here, and we're going to read this part right here as well. And apply the communitarian ethics approach in the disaster resilience in both a normative and political framework from promoting administrative ethical engagement because of its emphasis on social bonding and participation, and crucially, its commitment to community and values and social meanings of needed goods to guide policies designed to protect and promote them. Okay. She goes on to apply Waltzer's communitarians an account of the social goods to inform the discussions of the role and ethical responsibilities public administration officials is preparing for and responding to natural disasters. Robert Ackerman, 2008, employs the communitarian political view In the discussion of how to migrate to the efforts of disasters, he writes in 2008, communitarian values the role of civil society, the tapestry of voluntary associations such as the civic and clubs and neighborhood organizations, corporations and labor unions, religious and institutions, charitable organizations, educational institutions, even Robert Putnam's bowling leagues, and step forward to meet the various needs in time of disaster. It is the community network that ought to be the first line of defense when disaster strikes, and what people rely on ratherly immediately turning to outside agencies such as the governments to meet their post disaster needs. But Sabin and Ackerman that promise for their communitarian approach to disasters on the central place of the communities in the part in the preparations for response to and recovery from disasters. It sensed the natural that in an ethical theory that places a supremely high value on communities would resource with the concern with the moral challenges of disasters where the role of community is so central to a successful response to calamity. However, it is important to keep in mind that any ethical approach to disasters will value the contribution that the community can play in. Hold on. Amela- I'll say ameliorating of the consequences of disasters, but each approach will value community for different reasons. But we need we need to be clear about here is the specifically communitarians' reasons for valuing community. To offer words, we have to focus on moral particular particularism, particularism and ethical partiality, but in this notion of the communal self, how these ideas inform the communitarian concept of community in the face of disaster. But the value of the communitarian approach depends not on how much attention it gives to the role of the community, but on the specific reasons it advances for the normative importance of community. Okay, I'm gonna read this next part. To get an idea of a distinctiveness of communitarian approach, we begin to asking what is bad about the disaster for communitarian. The question may sound odd because it's a usual answer. So it's obvious that it does not often need mentioning. For most normative approaches, what is a bad when a disaster occurs? It is to harm and cause to the persons affected by it, or the natural and non natural disasters massively diminish in victims' well being, their life prospects, and their ability to function as citizens and moral agents. In most instances, it is the aggregated of these harms. Did I say that right? Aggregate of these harms, right? Of these harms in the contributes to our calling and an event of disaster in the first place, an earthquake. Okay, I'll say an earthquake. An earthquake in a remote or uninhabited region is not a disaster, and an event that harms a few individuals is likewise a misfortune for those affected, but not usually counted as a disaster. But the point of being that what is bad about disaster is usually understood as a running of the direct and indirect harm that befalls individuals. Okay. So, but it is important to recognize that the communitarian approach goes beyond this focus on individuals. This is a major part of what would be distinctive about the communitarian approach. As we have already seen, the community itself has moral standing. For the communitarian is moral worth. It is merely its instrumental value to the individuals who compose. Has value independently of its members. The value, practice, and the tradition of community have ethical standing. And so what is bad about a disaster is not only that is an occurrence harms some number of individuals, but that is threatens its existence of the community itself. For the communitarian, the calculation of the amount of harm occasioned by disaster that extends to the possible loss of the community itself. So, part of what is bad about a disaster is a threat of disappearance of the independent good to the existence of an ongoing community represent. But displacement of victims in Hurricane Katrina and flooding destroyed long-standing neighborhoods in New Orleans is an example of the loss of community and also an example of the consequences for people who lose the anchoring sense, place, and values that communities provide. Thus, the measurement of their loss must go beyond their individual suffering and their loss of property to include also their loss of community, but still further, the facts of this latter loss itself something ethically bad and not merely aggregated of individuals and feelings about the destructions of their community life. Okay. Beyond a concern with the preservation of community, communitarians are also advocates of the value of the community in addressing confronting problems such as disasters. In this, they resist what they take to be autonomistic individualist view that, for example, the template of a human rights captures the full range of moral problems, remedies. If the community is not only the source and anchor of the person's values, but also necessarily binding the connections that gives purpose and meaning to an individual's existence, then the community is the ethical lens through which disasters must be addressed. Therefore, once a disaster strikes, in addition to the threat a disaster poses to the existence of the community, it is the community that structures the ethical response to disaster. To the communitarian view that the community is the best place to address the challenges of disaster. It is the best understood from the perspective of the opposite view, which is well articulated in this philosophical literature, and a view that is frequently aired by the press in post-disaster situations. On the philosophical front, Naomi Zach has argued that the length of disasters created what she calls a second state nature. She writes in 2006, page 76, disasters may block or delay and disrupt distributions of necessities, civilians' inability to create in a short period of time. Useful social coalition that will sustain their lives, meaning that some will lie and steal and kill to get what they need to protect themselves. As a result, the second of the state nature of any moral resembles a brutal Hospian condition that are peaceful, cooperative, and productive Lockean communities. Such conditions of social disorganization, people central authority for efficient recognize the repair and for keeping the peace. Disasters are second state of nature because of the condition into which people are thrown by a disaster is temporary and does not provide grounds for the establishment of a new social contract. Most relevant to our discussions through our Zach's notion that firstly, disasters destroy social bonds. Secondly, that the ethical restraints of societies are likewise destroyed, leading victims to lie, steal, and kill. And thirdly, that the proper agency of the response to disasters is the government. Communitarians challenge each of their claims. While the empirical evidence is, of course, the mix, there is plenty of research that points to the community resilience in the face of disaster, and indeed points the value of social bonds in the aftermath of calamity. Rather than destroying community ties, disasters have often been shown to demonstrate the depths and the value of existing social bonds. Nancy Rosenblum, for example, writes that 2016 to 2012 disasters bring the beat the bare neighbors local knowledge of their experiences of reciprocity among decent folk, of spontaneous rallying and improvised collective action. Chris Gilligan, 2008, page 311, and argues that the awareness of the basic communitarian premise of the primacy of the community is stifled by the formal routines of everyday life, and that the ethical value of the community to most clearly demonstrates precisely on those actions. When disaster strikes, he goes to say in 2008, page 312, in this sense of disasters, perhaps more than any other kind of an event, revealed that the elusive phenomenon that Estonian refers to us as a spirit of community. Okay. There's claims to challenge Zach's Hobbesian's like definition of disasters, rather than throwing victims into a state of nature and where their state in selfishness is revealed. Disasters serve to review to the precise opposite, namely the fundamental social bonds that the anchor a person's values in a network. Reciprocity based on a shared ethical outlook of Zach's views is often rehearsed in less sophisticated way by the media. However, there is evidence that lying, killing, and stealing, and particularly looting, is not dominated note in the post-disaster situations. For instance, Rodriguez and Traynor and Quadratilli, Rodriguez in 2007 have argued that it is a case of Hurricane Katrina, emergent pro-social behavior was their normal rather than thus a general criminality and looting that were widely reported by the media. But they concluded their study by stating in 2007, page 100, the various social systems, the people in the rose into the demand challenges a catastrophe. Equally importantly, the behaviors that did appear were overwhelmingly pro-social, making the antisocial behavior seem relatively minor in the terms of frequency of significance. Finally, the political communitarians in the concert with its above and ethical points and argues that the proper and often actual first response to disasters it is the community in its various form and informal organized structures rather than the government. They go further and to make the argument that this is the states response, and sometimes not only interferes with, but only articulately opposed to communities' spontaneous ethical based aid in neighbors. John P. Clark, for example, argues 2013 to page 201 that during the Katrina crisis, but the state wreaked havoc. I mean, the state wreaked havoc, and not only by its exclusion of the citizens from the city and the failure to deliver into the storm victims, but also through the active persecution of those citizens of who sought to save and to rebuild their communities. But the attitude is the part of the political communitarians of general antagonism towards the skepticism of concerning to the value of the government and the state of the political communitarian would that argue that the local community is best placed respond to disasters, at least initially, that the state should provide assistance where necessarily in accord with the community's expressed um, wishes and values. But on one would argue that these examples speak in favor of the general communitarian proposition that the community understood in the primary source of ethical values is the proper lens for understanding and addressing the more difficulties of disasters and catastrophes. It could be argued that both importance of the community in mitigating the effects of the disasters and the communitarians and the unique placement of the communities at the central and ethical concern together in supporting the taking communitarian seriously as an approach to understanding the moral dimensions of disasters. But in the final section, I will challenge this argument by claiming that this interference from its centrality of community in disaster migration to the adoption of communitarian prospect is weak, at least as far as the limiting arguments currently available is the philosophical literature. So what we just read is political disasters of communitarianism disasters, right? And it's a long read, and that's a stop right there. So disasters of communitarian justice, distribute justice between communities. Okay, this is a long read, a little bit, and then we're going to go to intervention goods and the criticisms. We're going to take this time. This is a very, very long read. So I'm going to get this down. And I'm explaining the factors that what you just hear, and that's basically what it is in the philosophy we talk about. And communitarians is one of the few. So let's greet everybody again. What's going on, Shar? Greetings, greetings, greetings. He said, okay, cool. What's going on? What's greetings, TC Killer, our fellow villain. Salute, Alonzo, salute. What's going on, Mike? Salute. All hail, Great Skull, the advisor. What's going on, man? Yeah, man, because we in here today. We're in here today. So, yeah, man. So we're gonna get into this long read. So y'all bear with me, but we're gonna get into it. Oh dang, 30 minutes. Yeah, we got time. We're in no rush. So we're gonna get in here. I'm with my workhorse right now. Okay, distribute justice between communities. In this section, I want to move on from how to large question concerning what makes disasters ethically bad for communitarianism and why communitarians take themselves to be correct is placing the community at the center of their ethical concerns regarding disasters. To the consequences of this view for the practice of the disasters of prevention, response, and migration, while I have said very little have been written on the topics addressed in this chapter. What follows is necessarily construction of this kinds of things and advocating of communitarianism would say on their issues. This fact opens up an area for research sense, as we well notice below. Communitarianism has much to add to the importance of debates concerning the role of government. First responders, public health administrators, my fault, administrators, that the medical profession in dealing with the practical issues of addressing the consequences of disasters. I first wanted to look at the consequences of the communitarian commitment to particularism and partiality in the broader scheme of the philosophical and political debate. This commitment raises questions about the distributions of resources following a disaster. There are two dimensions to this issue. The first is to extend which non affected communities are morally obligated to provide aid and support to communities affected by disasters and catastrophe. Moral universalism, with its foundational commitment to impartial and moral judgment, and that does not distinguish between the ethical needs of persons based on their ownership of community, has no difficulty on this score. The distributions of resources following their disaster should be based on need and combined with considerations of efficiencies. But the element example, this kind of moral reasoning is to be found among utilitarians. We got to talk about this in the future. We might talk about this in the future. We're going to talk about utilitarianism to this in a minute after I get this done. Long read. I'll do some research and we'll explain whatever. We'll say versus utilitarianism. What's the difference? On the political side, liberal and uh, cos- yeah, cosmopolitans likewise subscribe to impartiality when ac- assessing to the obligations of a person, states, and addressing needs. My fault right there with the slip up. It happens. Happens to the best. The best ones always slip up when they read. It happens. Because when you have a long reading for yourself, it gets like that sometimes. It's a slip up. So yeah, we get this a lot. So in practice, obligations, first issue obligation. Did I read this part? Likewise, in addressing needs. Yeah. I want to read this part. I didn't read this part. Okay. The first time above asks about the obligation of non-affecting communities towards affecting communities. The second issue is ask about the obligations of communities affecting by disasters towards other communities also affected. Once again, the universalist imperialist position on position on this matter is quite clear, at least in the abstract of the partiality and towards in a favoring one's own community merely because it's one of its own community and morally arbitrary, and there is moral fault. I should note here that there are universalist, impartialist, impartialist grounds for partiality in cases. For instance, where attention to one's own anonymity is the most efficient way of meeting the most need. But once again, merely membership of a particular community is not on its own grounds for moral partiality. A further caveat should be noted before I get to the mass and issues of distributive justice in cases of disasters for communitarianism. It is quite possible to be like a liberal communitarian, and that is someone who defends traditional liberal values had from particularist and partialist standpoint. But in other words, a liberal communitarian would, in most cases, make the same moral and political choices a universalist liberal, but for very different reasons. This caveat is important because what follows is the discussion of the moral implications of the communitarian position on partiality rather than a doctrines of the moral choices that communitarians may make in practice. Okay. Yeah, I've not read this one because if it mentioned utilitarianism, right there. Yeah. I was on the right track. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute or an hour or two till I get done with this read. He said in practice, yeah. Okay, when we read this part, we're gonna get into interventions. See how much I got on the clock. Clock for a minute. What's going on, Nadia? Salute. Greetings. Yeah, so we're gonna get to this part. It's a long read. We're gonna get this part and we're gonna get to the next part. We'll see how long, because I'm almost done with this article. I'm gonna drop it and we're gonna talk. And we ain't gonna get into the criticisms. Like, y'all can read that for yourself. That's a long read. We're gonna stop it right here. Interventions and goods. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna keep this up. I'm gonna drop the article. Y'all can read what I was reading. And we're gonna read this part right now. We're gonna read this, and that's it. And I'll give y'all the meat of it, and then I'll discuss the criticisms of it, and we'll come back to it. And it's just what it is later. So we're going to do this part right here. Once the topics is closely related to their two issues, particularists have agreed that it's a context of defense of national partiality and defense of the patriotism. The community membership extends or intensifies the degree of the type of obligations that the members have towards one another. For example, David Miller have argued that 1988, page 647, the duties we owe to our compatriots may be more extensive than the duties we owe to strangers, simply because they are compatriots. If we translate this into context of disaster, then it follows that for communitarian, a just distributions of resources for preparing for and mitigating the efforts of disaster and could favor members of one's own community. In other words, partiality towards one's fellow community members can be justified and morally required in particulars grounds. Of course, this is the matter of one's or the circumstances where there is a scarcity of resources or obstacles to distributions. However, the point and to emphasize here is the particularist and partialist premise of the communitarian position have important consequences for how to think and about questions of distribution, distributive distributive justice in the context of disasters. This is an area of inquiry and research that has been developed into the literature. So this is the part what we've read distributive justice between communities. My fault. Yeah. I'm slipping up the day with my reading, but that happens. It happens to the best. So let's get it right here, real quick. Disasters, interventions, communities, and goods. The ethical guidelines they inform the decisions and actions of agencies charged with disasters preparedness, first responders, and those responsible for the disaster recovery are often expressed in the universalist language of human rights. This approach makes the assumption that there is a con- concordance, concordance between the ethical views of victims and state agencies and rescues in terms of their moral priorities. In other words, there's often a general assumptions that the hierarchy of goods in one side subscribes to the mirror to the other side to communitarian view challenges this assumption, and this is an important consequences for low to think about the disasters of interventions and along that the scale of preparedness and response and recovery. If it what it counts an ethically good and as well as an arrangement of communities and moral priorities, and particularly to its traditions and practice, then an argument can be made that outside agencies should calibrate their disaster interventions in the alignment with these goods priorities in the communities. It demands more than the usual community and consolidation into disasters of planning and response, but seeks a genuine comprehensions of the particular and ethical and the stance of the community, and that disasters planning and the response by appropriately talk to the ethical needs to the community. In my view, this is what most obvious area in which a communitarian approach to the discussion of the ethical challenges and the disasters can make an importance contribution at adopting communitarian ethical view. Here would be significant, particularly consequences for disasters management that go well beyond the more abstract philosophical issues that has been addressed to this chapter, but a detailed working on out the dis aspects of communitarianism relations to disasters would have welcomed the additions to the literature. Okay, this is it with this part. Linkspringer.com, and I'll get to the criticisms later. I'm gonna put this in the chat. That's what I'm reading, and we're gonna drop this down and we're gonna research it for a minute. I'm gonna put this in the chat. So in case y'all don't know, I know people is coming in. Appreciate y'all coming through. This may not be, I don't know, this is gonna be a long stream, but we're gonna see. We'll get here for a minute. This may not be a long one. This is part two. So that was a long read. So let me put myself out here for a minute. Yeah, just like it says, man, communitarianism is one of those philosophies you just get into it and just say, hey, we here now. And that's just what it is. And that's just what it takes. And after that, oh shit, a debate's going on. Okay, cool. I'll watch that later. Cause I know there's gonna be some bullshit afterwards. So we'll talk about that. But shouts out to Brother X, man. That debate is off the chain. But what Melly got? Yeah. Yeah. I ain't talking about that. I don't watch the debate. All right. So we're gonna stop this real quick, and we're gonna talk about communitarianism in this fully. Um, we got the philosophy base. I'm gonna take the philosophy basics off. We'll come back to it. I got my folder ready, so we're gonna type communitarianism. Okay. Oh, it got it for me right here. Good, 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 good. I want to hear this real quick. I want to see this real quick. Oh, we read this. Okay, wiki difference. Okay, okay, we talked about it. Okay, I got files on it. What's the difference? Let's see here. Let's see here. We're gonna talk about it real quick. I might have to save this a little bit. Uh, let's see. It's not good enough. I don't. I'm just gonna look at it real quick. But gotta find a look. Yeah, knock that off. I don't want to deal with that. They talk about health. I'm trying to get away from that. And that's just what it is. So, yeah, I'm trying to get this argument in with communitarianism when we know the ethical and yeah, to my public health. We're gonna talk about the difference philosophies and positives. Okay, the theory that's 2005. Uh oh shit. Yeah. Liberal versus communitarian. I don't want that. I want utilitarianism in that. Yeah, this is what we're going to talk about. It's a lot of context here. Oh damn, they blocked me. Shit. This ain't gonna work, yo. Let me find something else. I'm gonna find something for y'all. Hold on. We gotta get to this part. Cause it mentioned that in one of the fucking article like the articles and shit. Damn. Always something good and they just wanna I can't even find them shits. Let me see real quick, real quick, real quick. Ah, damn it. I have to go back to number one. I ain't bouncing around all that. Fuck this shit. Ugh, shit. It's always something. You can't find what you want, but I ain't talking about no health bullshit. That's not the topic. That's what the ideologies. You got all this weird shit. See, this is what happens when you debate utilitarianism. That's the fucking problem. That's the fucking problem. Like when you talk about this one, they're damn near there's a difference, but the problem is you can't get what the fuck you want. I don't like Google search. I just I'm trying enough for searcher. This shit is terrible. Like when you type these two up, don't expect to get shit. I'll tell you that right now. You ain't getting shit. When you get to these, it's so frustrating. That's what pisses me off about these two. And they're hard to research. That's why I need a fucking book on them too. Really do. I need a fucking book. That's the only way I'm going to solve this shit. The other twos, the other ideologies is simple. They got them all. This is bullshit because nobody talks about it like I do. See, I go in depth with this shit. See, when you try to research shit, they ain't gonna give you what you want because it's bullshit. I don't like that. I don't like that. See, when you talk about ethics and shit, this is where the confusion lies. I won't say philosophical because this is pissing me off. That's what pisses me off. I wanna see the difference. Like, we get it, but goddamn, like, get us something. And then we have certain sites, and then they block you because you got to sign up. Get out of here. That's the drawback with researching these. I'm telling y'all, people in the audience, that's the drawback. Because when you talk about it, you got to have those things. See, they put I don't want that shit. They put it in a health form. I don't want that. See, y'all pissing me off now. I want to debate on it. Just god damn. But that's the fucking problem with this shit. That's what the fuck you're gonna get. You're gonna get problems in these areas. This is why I don't really do these like that. Damn. It's like, and that's the problem with this. This subject is good, but I don't like when you try to find you. See, utilitarianism is hard. Y'all think it's easy, but it's not fucking easy. They just give you bland shit. That's what pisses me off because people don't properly research. That's what pisses me off more than anybody. I'm the only person probably talk about it. They talk about it, but they don't. They give you this pathetic form. Like, there's other forums and debates on it. There's criticisms. I got all the links to this shit, but it pisses me off because one, there's no argument between these two, so it's a waste of time to try to find them. But god damn, man, it's just always something. You got these weak ass articles that are stretched out. That's the thing. That's the drawback with these shits. And then you try to find some shit that's gonna work. What kills this for me is like I want to expound on that shit too. Damn. We're gonna have to, and it goes back to public health. I don't want to read that shit and get strike. That's what pisses me off. When they add health, that fucks up the whole convo. I want to talk about that bullshit because I'm biased on health. I really am. It's a different way I look at it than everybody else. But motherfuckers be killing me with this shit. That's why it's so hard to talk about utilitarianism. And I'm telling you how hard it is. It's easy and it's hard at the same time to research it. I'm just telling you right now. Because when you talk about ethics, you're talking about things like that. They both deal with ethics. My issue is it's not the best well researched like that all the time. This is why you need books to back it up and papers and shit. That's the whole point. So yeah, we're going to talk about it a little bit. That's what pisses me off about this one because that's the only one I can't deal with. Damn, it's always something. But you get what you get. You get what you pay for. This bullshit. That's why I don't fuck with a lot of researchers out here. See, I'm gonna have to do a series on them two separately because this is hard because you can't find shit. I gotta find a link that works or a search that's gonna work for me because that way you can have that pressure to yourself. So again, we're gonna read this part. The abstract. This is from Tanif offline or some shit. I'm not going to get into it, but utilitarianism has dominated media ethics for a century. For Mill, individual autonomy and neutrality are the foundations of his liberty and system logic, as well as his utilitarianism. Their concept fits naturally with media ethics theory and professional practice in a democracy society. Let's read this part again. In case y'all don't know, this is what utilitarianism did. They actually created democracy. If y'all don't know, it's a liberal. It's not a liberal. They actually create liberalism. So it's a utilitarian society. Yes, me and Cerulean agreed to that. Very interesting, and I'm glad the key words. We're gonna read this again. Utilitarians have dominated media ethics for a century. For male individual autonomy and neutrality are the foundations of his own liberty and system of logic, as well as his utilitarianism. These concepts fit naturally with the media ethics theory and professional practice in a democracy society. See, why I just highlight it right there lets me know that people should do the research it more. See, I talk about utilitarianism in my folders and shit in my playlist. Y'all watch all that. I break down the pros and cons of it. Um, it is what it is. It should be talked about more in this space because you understand what society you live in. You have some in your military that fucks up everything. That's why most Republicans preach this shit sometimes. So it's really crazy when you get to this level of indoctrination and things like that. So when you live in a society like this, you understand what you're dealing with. It's not very easy to talk about this subject because utilitarianism doesn't really be in people's minds. The problem with it is there's no actual studies, to combat the versus things. Like I tried it with the nihilism thing, that didn't work. It's always going to try to say it's the same with something else. It's a difficult one to do because that's why it has to be a separate topic. We can talk about communitarianism. I mentioned that. See, I have to have books and slides and shit. If I had a PowerPoint, I would tell you what's the difference. That's the problem with this damn thing because it is so frustrating when you talk about it that much, and you be surprised what I'm talking about. So some people don't understand it. Well, once you're understanding the philosophers, you really getting into it in this motion. So most people just don't understand it, man. It's one of those things that you got to deal with. And if I had a book on utilitarianism, you would understand what I'm talking about. Is in its purest form. It's a good philosophy to study and understand and combat some of the things in the real world. Because a lot of times when you talk about communitarianism, it's least talked about in politics, it's least talked about in circles. This is some of the shit that y'all should be talking about. These two right here, that affects everybody because people use words, and when you start reading and researching, you understand where its foundation is. You look at the world different. Yeah, it's some crazy people in different settings, but it's how it's practiced. You know what I'm saying? However, the weakness in utilitarianism, articulated by Ross, and direct us the stage to dialogue ethics of duty instead of Haberman's discuss ethics, and feminist ethics and communitarian ethics are examples of duty and rooted in the dialogue. Yeah, the dialogic relations enable us to start over in intellectually. Yeah. See, I'm talking about communitarianism tonight, but utilitarianism, like I said, it has a lot of pros and cons. I talked about it a lot. I won't talk about it again extensively. The pros and cons in a stream. I haven't yet to put it in a form. Nobody wants to have that discussion. Does it matter in any community? I might have to do a stream on does it matter in any community? Because this is going to be something to talk about because I think it should be talked about mostly because most people don't understand when you talk about utilitarianism, you got to put it in this fabric. Might have to do that and bring out certain things. A lot of people don't study more on that because that's the thing about utilitarianism right there. Because a lot of people don't talk about it. They don't go in depth like I do, and a lot of people think it's simple. It's not that simple as you think. Because you got dudes in certain spaces talk about it, saying they're black pilled, and I challenge them on that, but he ain't going for it. But I'm just saying in its proper form. I want a discussion on that. That's a huge discussion. Fuck them other philosophy. What about this shit right here? They birthed all of this shit. It's Victorian, yes, but you gotta understand it's still in practice in certain cultures. You know what I'm saying? Like we got it in America. Like, come on, man. People still on that bullshit. That's why feminism exists because of utilitarianism, man. They're not even utilitarian. That's just a small fraction. We talking about with men, these Plutarchs and shit. See, y'all don't go in depth, man. This is where we should be discussing. See that the patriarch shit won't work on this. Nah, this is undefeated. When shit falls, it go to this. It's crazy, ain't it? I mean, it helps some patriarchy, but that's a whole nother story. I'll do a subject on that. Did that create a patriarchy? We might have to talk about what utilitarian is. Is it a patriarch or matriarchy system? We got to look at it. Because the pleasure and pain are rooted in physical being, utilitarians such as Peter Sanger, animal lover, by the way, have argued that the happiness of all species that can feel pain and pleasure, such as animals, should count. See, he's an animal. I told you. Animal suffering is an important issue into contemporary utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, my fault. Contemporary, I want to read it again, is an important issue in contemporary utilitarianism, but is excluded as a tangible to the question of utilitarianism is in a professional ethics. So that's number one. Number two, Mill was a classical liberal who criticized British politics for its traditions and practice that encroach on human freedom. Mill's famous on the subjugation of the women in 1869 is based on classic liberal negative freedom. That is a restricted coercion and intrusion from government to government so freedom can flourish. Mill is qualitative utilitarian. I'm gonna let y'all know I did a stream on the difference between quantitative deals with numbers and quality deals with life. He's that type of utilitarian philosopher. John Stuart Mill, if y'all don't know who that is, I talk about him a lot on the playlist. A lot of those streams, playlists, pre-records, I talk about him a lot. If y'all want to ask me about it, I got files on that shit. Y'all can ask me anything about that. I need some books on that shit too. I want to find a good book about utilitarian societies and shit. We're gonna have that discussion, God damn it, because I think that's important. Because some people they need to understand what the fuck they talking about in these spheres and shit, especially other sectors. Because this one is the key right here. In addition, in Bentham's greatness and happiness principle, Mill's utilitarianism was essentially an acclamation of David Hume's empirical philosophy and concept of utility as a moral good. And Comte's positive tenets that things in themselves cannot be known and knowledge is restricted to sensations in his influential A System of Logic, Mill, 1843-1888, is typically characterized as combining the principles of the French positivism and British empiricism into a single system. But the first edition was substantially revised with the third edition, 1850, with the eighth, 1872. And we're going to read number 4 right here. Mills specifically credits to Commandant his use of the inverse, deductive, or historical method. This was an idea entirely new to me when I found it in Commante's, and but for him, I might not soon, if even, have arrived at all. 1873, 1969, page 162. Mills explicitly follows Commante's discussing social statics and social dynamics. He published 2 essays on Commante's influence in the Westminster Review, which were reprinted in Auguste Commante's and Positivism. Yeah, positivism or positivism or something like that. That's that philosophy that he followed. Okay, that's interesting. But these philosophies are dealt with in depth. This is number 5. Dealt with in depth in Mill, 1865. This book is a general philosophy, examines the theoretical issues and embedded a system of logic. 1843, 1888. Mill uses the same two approaches as the basis for his utilitarianism. 1861, 1979. In chapter 1, he argues that moral theories are divided between the two: intuitive, inductive, the latter as outlined defend in his system of logic. Our knowledge of the highest moral principle is known by intuition, without appeal to experience or through experience and observation, as Mill believed. Is number 6. The root links of the social science, the ideals of practice of the liberal state, on the growth that both attempt to be neutral between competing conceptions of the good. 1993, page 15. Okay. As Harris, 2002, page 142, and others have argued, although desirability, visibility illustrates Mill's empiricism, and his intended proof is not convincing, insisting that something is actually desired by people does not mean it should be desired. And people desire what should not. My desiring happiness does not itself make the promotion of happiness or moral obligation for me or in general. That's number 7. Number 8, often professional ethics and present we isolated consequentialism. That's a part of utilitarianism, the cousin of that. From a full-scale utilitarianism, that's total, we give up on the idea of maximizing happiness, but still try to evaluate the different courses of actions of purely in the terms of their consequences, hoping to state everything worth considering in our consequence descriptions. However, even this broad version of utilitarianism in Taylor's terms is a restrictive definition of the good that favors the mode of reason calculation, prevents us from taking seriously all facets of moral and normative political thinking. Taylor, 1982, page 144. John Rawls, he's a communitarian, by the way. 1971, just based moral theory is compelling critique of utilitarianism is a relevant here that utilitarianism is a teleological theory and Rawls justice as fairness of deontological. Ross, 1930, develops the concept of duty. Yeah, he's a deontologist. That's what he is. He's a deontologist. It means duty. Yeah, I forgot. John Rawls is part of that. Okay. More thoroughly and hence serves as the more important transition into this essay from mainline utilitarianism to a ethics of duty. That's deontology. Yeah. I haven't talked about that one. That's the cousin to that as well. For the analyze of Ross' critiques of Moore's utilitarianism and Ross's connections to Kant. Yeah, Kantology. It's another one out of that family. Virtue Ethics sees Myers, 2003, also applies Ross in theory to journalism in case of reporting on a childhood sex abuse. Wow. Pages 87 and 91. Okay. Myers introduced Gent's common morality, but calls into question for not making clear how to common and morality. It is grounded, 2003, page 92. Okay. The communal natural of moral agency becomes apparent when one traces the failed attempts since the 18th century of the presumptions of imperial self to arrive at the universal binding truths on its own. See Solomon, 1988, page 4. So you got Arnett and all this other stuff. So ain't that much. This talks about utilitarianism and common goods and Christians. Not much. And it's discounts. Okay. Not much here. So that's what you get for it. And that's where it comes from. And see, when you talk about communitarianism, you already know there's a difference between the two. Well, like when you talk about ethics, this is kind of what you get. See, this shit is so long. Like, see, I can't even read this shit and give you all this shit. So enough of that. I'll deal with that later because I that's an interesting subject on that. Are they very similar? My issue with is the research is bullshit. I don't like it. It should be better. They should add more. I don't like what they give me. I mean, I'm ashamed of the people that have these searches, man. It's pathetic, man. This is why I don't really talk about it as much. I'm gonna bring back the philosophy because I'm kind of disgusted. It could have been better, but I got utilitarianism in a folder and things like that. I got so much shit. That shit spread out like wildfire. See, y'all don't know. I be studying these shits. This ain't nothing to me. Motherfuckers kill me trying to. They won't talk about this shit. No, this is part of it. Collectivism and things like that. So we talked about it in the philosophy basics. So it is what it is. It's just something, man. We'll be fine. But yeah, this is part two of communitarianism. But yeah, it's one of those societies. Talks about community, talks about various things. And when I talked about it last week, I was talking about the ideological communitarianism we talked about, the radical centrist ideology we just read in the links, and then the philosophical communitarianism we just talked about that and read that. It's all in one in that in that link. So yeah, well, what's y'all thoughts on it? Y'all let me know. Whatever. I already did a part one explaining it, but yeah, communitarianism is one of those philosophies to learn. My thing with it is it gets in the way of things, but some people like to be that time in that position in community, but it's least discussed. I think the problem with me talking about this subject, it gets very sidebar and sidetracked. But the thing about it is, I don't really speak on it that much. But this is probably my last bit of it, part two. I ain't gonna get on it this much because it's least talked about. So if I ever do a part three, I'm gonna probably find a graft and see the difference because I'm tired of reading links and shit that I can't find. I'm disgusted with it. I was trying to compare it and what's the difference between the two, and I think I did on the last one, but it ain't enough. You know what I'm saying? What's the weaknesses? See, I already know the pros and cons of utilitarianism. I talked about that a lot, but this right here, in comparison to, they're really not the same. No, this deals with community. Utilitarianism deals with a group, a small group that wants happiness, or the majority of the group. It's particular one thought. That's a whole nother story on that. I ain't gonna get into that. I have to make a serious about that because I got folders for that. So yeah, man, like that's one thing I can tell you. And yeah, it's been an hour, so yeah. But it looks like when you have these discussions, utilitarianism will be in some form in this ideology and its counterpart. I think the problem with this one, it talks about community too much. It talks about community too much and it just gets into the way. So when you're dealing with communitarianism, it gets in its way. So I gotta find something that's gonna be conducive. Because sometimes you do what you do. I was itching a little bit. So let me get my back straight up. Oh man. Nerves acting up. So when we talk about it, we're gonna get this in its purest form. So yeah, we're gonna be here. Let's see. So I understand it's gonna be a long one. And damn, we're gonna do this. So I'm gonna do this real quick. Hold on. But that's the one thing I can say about it in so many words. But yeah, like I speak on it, things like that. So oh man. And let me see about quick. Let me get straight up for a minute. Hold on. Yeah, because the one thing I can say about it, it deals with community and things like that. So, but yeah, just it is what it is. So I know people are just going to go in and do their thing. So, but yeah, yeah, this ain't gonna probably be longer because when you talk about communitarianism, man, that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this be up here for a minute, and let's see. I'm gonna find something else too, because case if y'all don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna put this in the link. I'm gonna do this again. I'll put the philosophy in it as well. If y'all ask me what I was reading and ask y'all, just to refresh your memory, it's a refresh link. So again, we're gonna do this and that's it. So I know people I want to see because I know people are gonna listen to this on the playback, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So as we can tell, when we talk about communitarianism, I think that's one thing that needs to be addressed to talk about on typing some is it really important in society? Is it really important that Let's see what I can get. Man, these articles is so goddamn small, man. Shit. Let's see right here. But yeah. So I'm trying to see for a minute. I'm gonna drop this little philosophy down. Hold on, y'all give me a second. Let me share the screen because this is getting on my nerves because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to get here. Ain't that much links to find. See, that's the thing about these. That's why I don't really do these, but I'm just doing it anyway. So I got it off of Philosophy Basics. That's why I found most of these. So you talk about these, this is where people get lost. But it's good to talk about it because it does exist. It's just it gives you free examples. It's not that many good articles on it. Like that's the drawback with this. See, that's where the books come in. That's where the books come in. And then they show you these colleges and shit. And long ass, small ass writing. You got that type of vision. Fuck out of here. To my gay rights. I'm not talking about that. That's Tolstoyan territory. We're not doing that. Fuck out of here. No hate, but we're not messing with y'all over here. This is not the channel for that. There's other channels. Keep that bullshit to yourself. Let's see this shit. He said, "You're not a communitarian." The fuck? The rational standard.com. Interesting. This is an interesting article. Hold on. Let's read this shit. That's a good point. Individuals form communities, but not the other way around. The communitarian claims that the community shapes the individual, but without individuals, a group cannot exist. Interesting take. Hey, that's an interesting take. That's a good argument. Let's read, shall we? In the past few years, many individuals in South African politics have come to start identifying themselves as communitarian. This has mostly come from a segment of pundits who would otherwise identify as conservatives or right wing. If we are to use two terms which I have lambasted as intellectually useless. It's a good argument. It's a good argument. It's a good argument. Oh, I can read this from a distance. Hold on. Yeah, I can see the fucking lettering. Yeah. Yeah, I can read this shit. That's just in case, because this may be a short little read. We're gonna read this. We're gonna read this together. Let's see if y'all can see the screen. Does it give me a oh damn. But you know what? I'll read it off to you and tell you what the words are. I know we can't see it in full screen. We're gonna view that. Okay. Oh shit, you can't. Okay, you can't even view. Okay, I'll read it off to y'all. What it says to y'all. Okay, the rise of communitarian has come about a response to the apparent failings of individualizing of liberalism, especially in the wake of the radical left ideology dominating society. They believe globalism is the new form of imperialism, threatening their way of life threatening way of life. Communitarians claim that we need to strong communities with masculine culture. Oh, here's the word masculine culture. All right. To oppose globalism to make up for the shortcomings of liberalism, to oppose the toxicity of the left. They identify as communitarians because their support of such community and their belief that their community itself is important. But socialism does not actually mean love of socializing. Communitarianism doesn't actually merely mean a love of community. This is ideology has a far more complex history and set of beliefs than merely identifying the importance of community. And it is these beliefs that so-called communitarians may not actually identify with their purported ideology. Uh-oh. Oh, I like this article. Oh, now we got a counter argument. We already know what it is. What is communitarianism? Well, we just talked about it. Okay, we're gonna read this part right here. Man, I found me an article. Uh-oh. We got time. 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 So I'm gonna read this in time. What's going on, Aries? Salute, 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 salute. Yeah, we got time today. We got time today. I'm gonna read this part. Involuntary community. What else I got? Might makes right. What else we got? What about small communities? We won't get to the meat and potatoes of it. What about small communities? We ain't gonna do that. This this is the rational standard. And you know what? You know what? You know what? I just found me a fucking article. Thank you. See, now we're talking. A counter. A counter. See, we already know what it is, so we're gonna skim through that. Individuals form communities. Okay. The inherent logic flaw in communitarianism is an instance on the community as an essential core of its reality. It believes that communities must supersede individuals because communities are more important. But it has missed a very obvious problem with this. Individuals form communities, not the other way around. The communitarian claims that the community shapes the individual, and that is true to an extent, but does not change the fact that without individuals, a group cannot exist. Communities and groups are external divine entities that exist without its members of demanding tribes and abundance. There are associations often formed spontaneously, individuals seeking companionship, mutual, and commerce. Communities simply serve the individual, not the other way around. Communitarians may argue that while individuals are the brick that forms the community and house, a house is more important than the brick. Individual rights, the communitarians have trusted over the fact that groups are up made up of individuals. That is correct. That is correct. That is so true. That's a fair argument right here. I like that. I like that. I like the counter. Okay. Involuntary community. Communitarians cries for the freedom of a group to act it will. But it's the will may violate its members. In a voluntary community, a organizations cannot happen as a member cannot opt in or out. But a communitarian believes that the group rights trump the individual, but they cannot leave as they are the cog of the machine that gets the final say. Individual rights are deemed as universalistic, abstract notions that destroy the community. But the fact that some groups want to violate them to begin with with proof enough to the need for their existence. There are many cultures and communities and groups that have members, but that aren't allowed to leave. The many of the forced members to join. A communitarian believes fundamentally that a group determines as own laws, morality, thus allowing slavery, cannibalism, ritual sacrifice, etc. A communitarian cannot actually condemn these if they are to adopt as a part of a group identity. They are essentially moral relativists. Relativists. Let's read this part again. Hold on. In case y'all didn't know. Let's read this part again. Let's read this little part right here. We're going to go back to the many part. Many even force members to join a communitarian beliefs fundamentally that a group determines its own laws, morality, thus allowing slavery, cannibalism, ritual sacrifice, etc. A communitarian can actually condemn these if they are adopted as a part of the group. They are essentially moral relativists. Relativists. Wow. See, that kills the argument right there. There you go. In practice, in the ISIS is a textbook example of the communitarian society. If it's a group following its core beliefs, not caring about the universal ethics or law, its members don't get any say in the matter, as it is a amorphous rule of the group that matters, particularly the means of the following text of the ancient dead people or the whims of the cultural elite. Might makes right. I'm gonna skim through this, what it's called, the communities. We're gonna read this part and I'm gonna end. I'm gonna give you the rest so y'all can read. So we're gonna talk about this segment right here because we're gonna talk about how universalistic it is. So, in so many words, this part right here is going to confirm, this argument. Communitarianism is universalistic. A grand irony of communitarians discuss the universal principles as their belief is universal. They believe that all groups are important. They believe that all groups supersede the individual. They believe that all groups are right into their revelistic notions, rather than being a humble ideology that seeks to critique the oppressive universality of liberalism. Communitarianism wants to let a group of impose itself on individuals within the borders. No matter what the individual believes or wants, it puts the collective before the individual. A truly humble ideology driven by its desires to serve the contextual realities would rather than recognize to their true minority, but the individual and its need to sovereignty, not to the group of oppressing said individual. They said they do not understand culture. Yeah. So we already know. But yeah, it's enough on this. I can do a part 3 in the future and we discuss this part and things like that. But yeah. A lot of people say you're not a communitarian. And if y'all want to read this for yourself, that's good. Enough on the subject. It explains there's pros and cons to that. I might do a series on that. So we already know what time it is for y'all. That's that. So we're gonna put this out here because this ain't no anything. So yeah, we're gonna put this in here. And yeah, that's it. It says like in the article, it says you're not a communitarian, but it's at the rationalstandard.com. So y'all know what it is. So we're gonna knock this off right quick. We're gonna keep that. That's gonna be like, if y'all want me to do a part 3 on that, that's cool. Um Basically, I'm just like looking at it like, okay, we gotta look at this right here. And okay. Look at this real quick. I accidentally hit that by mistake. So when we get to this part, we talked about it, and then there's criticisms they considered and things like that. Secondly, and all that. So when you get to that part, and then there's conclusions to it. So we're gonna drop the disasters part. So I got sources of it. So yeah, that's it with communitarianism. I appreciate everybody came through, and yeah, it's a good subject, and it's just what it is. Mostly, I'll be back tomorrow talk about my analytics and things like that. Shouts out to Real Deal Financial. He was asking me my time on YouTube and things like that. Well, it's different when I had no content from 2015 to 2020. That's where the 5-year hiatus came in. It was a 5-year hiatus for me, but after 5 years, and I'll say 6 years coming in, 5.5 going on 6 years, I came back doing content once again in 2021. Because last year was a good move. This year it's just like we here now, right? So basically, what I'm saying is, don't expect me to do anything different. So we know what time it is, and expect more. Expect more. So communitarianism is one thing, and that's just one thing I talk about of today's subject. This is probably my final part of doing this, but if y'all want another discussion, that's cool. That's great. But I can say this: I like the criticisms. I like how they did that with that article, and they try to say you're not. And an individual does build a community. That is so true. Uh, my issue with it is they do, and they go against the actual source of what it is. So it's good arguments in there. You can debate this all the time. What is communitarianism? If they ever ask me, I told them they deal with the group, right? But they don't deal with individuals, leaders. So they want to be a herd or something. They can think for themselves. That's crazy. But that's a whole nother story. So you know what I'm saying? Like, you know how it is. And that's just what it is. So we already know what time it is on that. So yeah, when you talk about communitarianism, it's just what it's gonna be. So I was looking at that criticism. I said, you know what, this is gonna be a good one, even though it's an hour and 48 minutes, and just try and get my minutes in and just talk. And yeah, I was talking about that criticism, and it's all good. But most people don't understand that that's just it. So people ask me about it. I'm gonna change this real quick. If we ever start talking and things like that, hold on. Go here real quick. Boom, boom. Here we go. But that's why I'm saying, like, who's doing it long term? Who's doing it? So I'm saying, like, I feel like this is one of those things that I was looking at it. And I was like, man, I like that criticism. They try to say individuals build communities, and someone say I'm a communitarian. I love my community. I hate individuals. And I was like, okay, bruh. I was like, bruh. Okay. you gotta stop hating. He said, I am a communitarian. You don't know what you're talking about, sir. I said, okay. I said, okay. 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 And people be on that bullshit. And they try to say, hey, what are you doing? They said, what are you doing? Dynamicville, what are you doing? They said, what are you doing? You ain't supposed to deny me. Ah, 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 ah. Ah, 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 ah. Oh, man. Y'all killing me, bro. Y'all killing me, bro. Oh, man. Mm-mm-mm. But it is what it is. But a lot of people, they just want to get into it and get emotional. So we already know what time it is. Yeah. So, like one thing I can say about it during this topic, man, it's just what it is. So we here now. We here now. So I was just trying to find something to scare y'all with. Y'all on here. He said, this dude crazy. Oh shit. Is this microphone? Oh shit. They got so many, man. Oh my god. But yeah, folks, it is what it is. So I'm just like, we're gonna be through with this. So y'all bear with me for a minute. And we're gonna put this to bed. Let's see, this page has, yeah, I'm gonna put that. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna put this in the bed. So I'm gonna edit the avatar for a minute. Hold on for a minute. Yeah. I'm gonna go back to it. Let's see. I used to talk like this a lot in the green. Uh yeah, I can drop that. Yeah, I can always bring that back. Cause y'all remember that. I'm gonna show y'all something. Hold on. If I switch, I got a new one. Here you go. Y'all gonna love this shit. Y'all gonna love this shit. Y'all gonna love this shit. Hold on. Hit that. Oh, my sinus is acting up. Yeah, I'm back at it. How I look? Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Talking to y'all. So that's the new, this is gonna be for my Wednesday shit. The history and the mics. But I'm back at it. So yeah, we done with communitarianism, but I want to shout out everybody. I just had to show y'all that I was being petty for a minute. Let's see. I got so many in it. It's ridiculous. I don't keep the color. And so what the fuck is it? And so don't worry about it. I might change it later. I might keep it and do whatever with it. So with that, appreciate you, Aries. Appreciate you, the advisor himself, Dr. Doom himself, DeAndre himself, our other fellow villain, Degenerate, and Nadia. Appreciate you coming through. TC Killer, Shar, appreciate y'all for coming through. Matt, appreciate you coming through. Who else? The new person, appreciate you coming through. Yeah, because I'm going to end it because I know people ain't going to come up because this is like part 2. So I'm not going to be long. I'm not going to be long-winded and things like that. So I ain't going to hold y'all up. But I ain't going to hold y'all up because I know there's a debate on X's and shit like that. So we're gonna keep it that way. Government and politics. Yeah, I'm gonna close it. Get that out the way. Yeah, because we good over here. So appreciate y'all coming through. This is part 2, and I know it's on short notice. The ones that missed it, y'all can watch this on the playback. So with that, all I'm gonna say is peace and shalom. Oh hell, Great Skull, and I'm out.